Stop scrolling. What if 10 focused minutes a day could make you the person you want to be? Every episode on premium audiobooks gives you full-length listening, compact action steps, and science-backed strategies, so you learn faster, act smarter, and build real habits that stick. Subscribe to premium audiobooks now for ad-free access, exclusive guides, and a new transformational audiobook every week. Hit subscribe and turn your next 10 minutes into progress. Number 1. Define values. Set daily standards. Most people drift through their days guided by moods, pressure, and the habits of the people around them. They wake up, react to what demands their attention, and fall into bed at night, hoping that tomorrow will somehow be better. But hope without direction is fragile. Real self-leadership begins when a person decides, with quiet certainty, what they stand for and how they will live each day. This is the foundation of all discipline. Before you can lead your actions, you must define your values. Before you can expect consistency from yourself, you must set daily standards that shape your behavior when motivation disappears. Values are not slogans. They are the invisible lines that guide your choices when no one is watching. They are not what you say you care about, but what your time, energy, and behavior consistently demonstrate. Many people carry borrowed values, inherited from family, culture, or social media, without ever testing whether those values truly fit who they want to become. That is why their lives feel conflicted. They chase success according to someone else's rules and feel empty when they arrive. To lead yourself first, you must decide what matters to you at the deepest level. Not what sounds impressive, not what gains quick applause, but what you are willing to sacrifice for, protect, and uphold even when it costs you comfort. Begin by stripping life down to its essentials. Ask what kind of person you respect, not in words but in conduct. Observe the people whose behavior earns trust across years, not just moments of popularity. Look at the traits that remain strong under pressure. Integrity, reliability, courage, patience, focus, responsibility, humility. From these, choose a small number that will form the core of your personal code. Fewer is stronger. Too many values become slogans. 3 to 5 become a compass. Once chosen, define what each value looks like in daily behavior. Honesty is not an abstract idea. It is returning the extra change, speaking the uncomfortable truth, keeping promises when breaking them would be easier. Discipline is not intensity. It is showing up on ordinary days when nothing dramatic is at stake. Writing these values down matters because the mind forgets under stress. A written standard is a contract with your future self. It reminds you who you decided to be before fear and fatigue attempted to negotiate your character. Keep these values visible, not hidden in a notebook that gathers dust, but placed where your eyes return daily: a mirror, a phone screen, a desk, a wall. The goal is not decoration. The goal is alignment between intention and behavior. Once values are clear, standards give them teeth. A value without a standard is a wish. A standard turns belief into action. Standards answer the question of how you behave on an average day. Not on perfect days, not during crises, but on the routine days that quietly shape your destiny. If your value is health, your standard might be movement every day without excuse, simple meals most of the time, sleep protected as a non-negotiable. If your value is self-respect, your standard might be speaking clearly, refusing to tolerate recurring disrespect, and managing your time as something valuable rather than disposable. Daily standards must be specific, measurable, and demanding enough to stretch you without breaking you. Vague promises create loopholes. Clear standards close them. I will work harder means nothing on a tired afternoon. I will begin focused work at 9:00 and complete the first priority task before checking messages. Leaves little room for debate. Standards remove the need for constant decision-making. When you know in advance how you behave, you conserve energy and eliminate inner argument. Discipline becomes less about force and more about identity. Expect resistance the moment standards are set. The mind will push back with discomfort, excuses, and delayed intentions. This resistance is not a sign of error. It is a sign that real change is underway. The old habits feel threatened because they are being challenged. This is where most people retreat. They soften their standards to quiet the unease. Self-leadership requires the opposite response. Confront the resistance calmly. Do not matter-of-factly negotiate with it. Treat your standards as fixed and your emotions as temporary weather. Alignment between values and standards gradually builds self-trust. Every time you keep a commitment to yourself, you strengthen your internal authority. You become someone who follows through. You stop searching for external validation because your actions speak to your conscience daily. This quiet confidence changes how you stand, how you speak, and how you choose. Other people may never know exactly why you carry yourself differently, but they will feel the steadiness of someone who leads from within. Real-world application begins with the first quiet hour of the morning. Before the world shapes your attention, return to your values. Read them slowly. Then review your standards for the day. Ask whether your schedule reflects what you claim to care about. Time is the most honest mirror of values. If family matters, time must be reserved for presence. If growth matters, time must be claimed for learning and skill building. If character matters, time must be spent doing difficult things that offer no applause. During the day, use your standards as a filter. When distractions appear, measure them against your code. Not every opportunity deserves your energy. Not every request merits a yes. A person without standards is driven by urgency and guilt. A person with standards is guided by principle. This does not make life rigid. It makes it purposeful. Within clear boundaries, you gain freedom from regret and resentment. At night, conduct a simple review. Not a harsh interrogation, but a calm evaluation. Did your actions match your standards today? Where did they align? Where did they drift? The purpose is not self-punishment. The purpose is learning. Growth depends on awareness. Small corrections made daily prevent large regrets later. If a standard was repeatedly missed, it may need to be refined, not abandoned. Unrealistic rules breed quiet rebellion. Strong standards challenge while remaining achievable. Over time, standards evolve as character strengthens. What once required effort becomes baseline. Where discipline once felt heavy, it begins to feel natural. This is not because life becomes easier, but because you become stronger. The work does not disappear. You simply become more capable of carrying it. Each season of growth demands a new level of ownership. The dangerous moment is comfort. That is when standards quietly slip, and old habits attempt to return under new disguises. Values and standards also shape how you respond to failure. Without them, failure feels like identity collapse. With them, failure becomes feedback. You separate who you are from what you did. You correct behavior without condemning the self. This balance prevents both arrogance and despair. It creates resilient confidence grounded in process rather than outcomes. Leadership of the self is the hardest leadership because there are no medals for consistency in private. No audience applauds when you wake early. Keep promises, speak the truth, or choose restraint. Yet this unseen discipline is what gives you credibility when the world does begin to watch. External leadership without internal leadership is unstable. The ability to guide others is built on the quiet proof that you can guide yourself. Many people search for motivation as if it were a resource that must arrive before effort begins. In reality, motivation grows from action aligned with values. Standards generate results. Results generate belief. Belief fuels further action. This cycle, repeated daily, creates momentum that does not depend on mood. You stop asking whether you feel like doing the work. You already decided who you are. Defining values and setting daily standards also clarifies sacrifice. Every meaningful life requires sacrifice, but most people sacrifice without intention. They give up health for money, relationships for status, peace for approval. When values are clear, sacrifice becomes purposeful rather than accidental. You choose what you are willing to give up in service of what matters most. This prevents the quiet bitterness that grows from regret. Self-discipline is often misunderstood as punishment. In truth, it is protection. It guards your future from the whims of the present moment. It shields your potential from the comfort of excuses. It creates the structure within which freedom can exist without chaos. Values define what your freedom serves. Standards determine how that freedom is used each day. No one is born with these structures. They are built through deliberate reflection and repeated action. The process feels slow at first, because the results are internal before they become visible. Yet nothing is more powerful than a person who knows their principles and lives by them in small, consistent ways. Such a person cannot be easily manipulated, distracted, or broken by temporary setbacks. They stand on something solid even when circumstances shake. When mornings become heavy and progress feels ordinary, return again to the fundamentals. Read your values, review your standards, adjust where necessary. Then act not with drama but with quiet resolve. Day after day, this simple cycle reshapes identity. What once felt forced becomes natural. What once required willpower becomes habit. What once felt impossible becomes routine. There will be days when standards are met with ease, and days when they feel like chains on tired limbs. Both days count. Discipline is not proven only in moments of strength, but in moments of weariness. It is easy to keep a promise when energy is high. The measure of character is what happens when it is low. Each time you choose to keep your standard in such moments, you lay another stone in the foundation of self-respect. Eventually, something profound happens. You stop arguing with yourself. The inner conflict quiets because your actions consistently match your declared values. This alignment creates peace that does not depend on circumstances. Challenges still exist. The world remains unpredictable, yet your response becomes steady. You are no longer pulled in 10 directions by impulse and pressure. You move with intention. This is the quiet power of leading yourself first. It does not come from force, noise, or external control. It comes from an inner order built through chosen values and lived standards. It grows patiently, almost invisibly, until one day you realize that you trust yourself in ways you once did not. You rely on your word because you have proven it reliable. You face difficulty with composure because you have trained yourself in the ordinary moments. Each day offers the same invitation: to drift or to decide, to react or to lead, to live by impulse or by principle. Defining values and setting daily standards is how you accept that invitation with clarity. The work is not glamorous. It is quiet, repetitive, and often unseen. Yet from this simple practice arises a life of strength, direction, and enduring self-respect. Number 2. Build morning routines before motivation. Most people wait to feel ready before they begin. They wait for energy to rise, for confidence to appear, for circumstances to feel favorable. Morning after morning, they delay the first meaningful action because motivation has not arrived yet. But motivation is unreliable. It comes and goes like the weather. If your progress depends on how you feel when you wake up, your growth will always be inconsistent. The truth is simple and often uncomfortable. Discipline must lead, not motivation. A well-built morning routine is not created because you feel inspired. It is built so that progress continues even when inspiration is absent. The way you begin your day quietly shapes the rest of it. Your first actions signal to your mind what kind of person you are that day. If the day begins in chaos, rushing, and distraction, the mind learns that disorder is normal. If the day begins with intention, structure, and purposeful movement, the mind learns to follow direction. Morning is not just a time on the clock. It is a psychological doorway. What passes through it determines the tone of everything that follows. Most people do not realize that the early hours are when the will is most neutral. It has not yet been worn down by decisions, stress, and pressure. This makes morning the most powerful time to shape behavior. Yet this is also the time when resistance feels strongest, because the body is warm with comfort and the mind is eager to avoid effort. Building a routine before motivation means acting while comfort still pulls at you. It means deciding in advance what must be done, then doing it without negotiation. A morning routine is not meant to impress anyone. It is not a performance. It is a private agreement between you and your future self. It says that no matter how the day unfolds, you have already kept one promise to yourself before the world made its demands. That single act of follow-through strengthens identity more than 100 motivational thoughts. To build a routine that functions without motivation, it must be simple, realistic, and anchored in purpose. Excessively complex routines collapse under fatigue. The goal is not to cram as many habits as possible into the early hours. The goal is to establish a small set of actions that can be completed even on difficult mornings. Consistency matters more than ambition. A routine that survives exhaustion is more powerful than one that only works on perfect days. The first moments after waking are critical. What you reach for immediately trains your attention. If the first action is to check messages, scroll through feeds, or absorb the emotional noise of the world, your mind becomes reactive before it becomes intentional. The day begins in response mode. Over time, this weakens inner control. A disciplined routine replaces reactivity with structure. It places a clear action between waking and distraction. That action might be making the bed, washing the face with cold water, stepping into silence, writing a few lines, or taking a short walk. The specific behavior matters less than the fact that it is deliberate and repeated without debate. Physical movement early in the day is not merely about fitness. It is a message to the nervous system that you are in command. Even modest movement shifts the body from lethargy into alertness. It breaks the spell of sleep and signals that comfort is no longer the priority. Over time, the body learns to associate morning with motion and readiness, rather than delay. This pattern reduces the need for willpower later, because the system expects effort as part of the daily rhythm. Order in the environment also plays a quiet role. A disordered space reinforces a disordered mind. A routine that includes simple acts of order, such as clearing a surface, preparing clothes the night before, or arranging tools needed for the day, removes friction before it can create excuses. Each small act of preparation removes one more obstacle between you and your standards. Silence is another powerful component often ignored. Before the noise of the world enters, a few moments of stillness allow you to hear your own direction. This does not require complex practice. It requires attention. A few minutes of calm breathing, reflection, or written intention steadies the mind. It creates a space between stimulus and response. From that space, self-leadership becomes possible. Motivation often fails because people use it as permission. They wait for a feeling to grant them access to action. A routine reverses this relationship. Action becomes the authority. Feeling becomes the secondary result. When behavior happens first, emotion follows, energy rises after the body moves. Clarity sharpens after attention is directed. Confidence grows after promises are kept. The routine does not depend on these feelings. It produces them as side effects over time. Resistance will appear in subtle forms. The mind will suggest small delays that feel harmless. Just a few more minutes. Just one more look. Just another thought. Before beginning. These small concessions seem insignificant, but they create a pattern of postponement. Each delay trains the brain to associate intention with hesitation rather than execution. A strong routine eliminates choice in the early steps. The fewer decisions required, the less space there is for avoidance. To make a routine durable, it must be tied to identity rather than outcome. Do not treat the routine as something you do only when you need progress. Treat it as something a disciplined person does, because that is who they are. Identity-centered habits survive emotional fluctuation. When behavior reflects identity, it no longer requires constant justification. The purpose of the routine is not to create pressure, but to create stability. Stability reduces anxiety because it removes uncertainty. When you know how the day begins, you free mental energy for what truly requires thought. Uncertainty drains attention. Routine protects it. This is why disciplined people often appear calm even under heavy responsibility. Their foundations are firm. Many abandon routines because they expect dramatic transformation too quickly. They begin with intensity and quit when mood changes. True routines grow through repetition rather than excitement. Repetition does not feel impressive, but it is how the nervous system learns. Each repeated action becomes easier not because it grows less demanding, but because it becomes familiar. Familiar effort requires less negotiation. A routine also provides a quiet form of accountability. When you act at the same time each day, deviation becomes noticeable. You no longer need guilt or pressure to highlight inconsistency. The absence of the routine itself becomes the signal. This awareness allows correction without self-attack. You return to structure not from shame, but from understanding. External circumstances will attempt to disrupt the routine. Travel, family demands, unexpected responsibilities, and fatigue will test its strength. A routine built on rigid conditions will collapse under these pressures. A routine built on principles will adapt without disappearing. The form may change, but the core remains. Even on disrupted days, something is preserved. A brief moment of order, a short period of movement, a quiet intention. These small anchors prevent the day from drifting out of alignment. Over time, the routine shapes character in ways that are difficult to quantify but impossible to ignore. You become someone who begins, someone who acts without waiting for the mood to arrive, someone who keeps moving through resistance rather than negotiating with it. This self-image quietly influences every other area of life. Work becomes steadier, relationships become more reliable, pressure becomes more manageable. All of this grows from the simple act of beginning each day with purpose. Morning discipline also changes how you view difficulty. When effort is practiced daily in small forms, larger challenges feel less intimidating. The mind grows accustomed to crossing the gap between intention and action. What once felt heavy becomes ordinary. This does not remove struggle, but it removes surprise. You no longer ask whether effort is required. You expect it. There is also a deeper reward that emerges over time: self-respect. Self-respect is not built through praise or achievement alone. It is built through evidence. Each morning you act in alignment with your chosen direction. You accumulate quiet proof that your word means something. This proof strengthens your inner voice. It becomes easier to trust your own decisions because you have demonstrated reliability to yourself again and again. Many attempt to change their lives by altering information rather than behavior. They search for new ideas, new inspiration, new strategies, yet nothing changes until the first hours of the day change. The morning is where potential either gathers momentum or slowly evaporates. A routine gathers momentum when the rest of the world is not yet pulling your attention in separate directions. Building this structure before motivation also protects you on emotionally heavy days. When grief, disappointment, or frustration rises, the routine remains. You do not rely on emotional clarity to carry you forward. You rely on structure. This prevents temporary emotions from producing permanent detours. You may move more slowly, but you still move. Discipline in the morning also trains patience. Many tasks do not offer immediate feedback. The routine teaches you to act without instant reward. Over time, this patience strengthens your ability to pursue long-term goals without needing constant confirmation that progress is being made. You learn to trust the process rather than chase stimulation. A common mistake is attempting to transform the entire life at once through the morning routine. Sustainable change grows through narrow focus. Choose a few actions. Anchor them deeply. Then when they are secure, additional elements can be added. This layered approach respects the limits of attention and prevents burnout. Growth is not a sprint at dawn. It is a steady climb that begins there. A routine also clarifies priorities in a practical way. What you include in the first part of the day reveals what you truly value. If growth matters, time must be made for learning. If strength matters, the body must be challenged. If clarity matters, silence must be protected. A routine exposes contradiction quickly. It does not judge, it simply reflects. There will be mornings when the routine feels mechanical, empty of feeling. These mornings are not failures. They are training. Discipline is not always inspiring. Sometimes it is quiet endurance. The benefit is not always felt immediately. Often it appears weeks later in unexpected calm, steady energy, and the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you did not abandon yourself when comfort called. Eventually, a shift occurs. What once required effort begins to feel natural. Not easy, but natural. The mind stops searching for permission to act. The body responds more quickly to intention. The delay between thought and action shortens. This is the mark of internal leadership. You move because you decided to move. Waiting for motivation leaves your future in the hands of emotion. Building a routine places your future in the hands of principle. Emotion fluctuates. Principle remains. When principle governs the first hours of the day, it slowly extends into every other hour. The discipline practiced at dawn becomes the backbone of the entire life. A strong morning routine does not guarantee comfort, success, or ease. What it guarantees is direction. It guarantees that each day begins with choice rather than drift. That small difference, repeated over months and years, separates those who steadily shape their lives from those who are shaped by circumstance. Progress does not require dramatic mornings. It requires faithful ones. Each day you rise and act without waiting for the perfect feeling. You strengthen the part of you that leads. The discomfort fades. The structure remains. And slowly, almost without noticing, you become someone who no longer depends on motivation to move forward. You move because it is simply what you do. Number 3. Audit time. Eliminate silent leaks. Time is the one resource everyone possesses equally. Yet almost no one manages with real clarity. It flows relentlessly, yet it often disappears unnoticed, siphoned off by distractions, habits, and small decisions that seem insignificant in isolation. These silent leaks of time accumulate, quietly, eroding productivity, focus, and even the sense of control over life. People spend hours scrolling through content, attending to minor interruptions, or allowing vague commitments to expand endlessly, all while thinking they are busy. True self-leadership begins with understanding where time goes and reclaiming it with deliberate attention. Auditing your time is not a one-time exercise or a casual glance at a calendar. It is an act of ruthless observation and honest accounting. The first step is awareness. For several days, track everything that occupies your attention, not just work tasks, but small moments as well. Checking your phone, chatting casually, responding to emails, lingering in thought without action. Every minute must be acknowledged. The goal is not judgment, but understanding. Patterns only reveal themselves when the data is complete. Most people are shocked when they see how much energy is lost in seemingly trivial activities. Once you have a clear record, the second step is analysis. Look for patterns that repeatedly consume attention without meaningful results. These are your silent leaks. They are often disguised as necessary, relaxing, or productive, but on closer examination, they fail to contribute toward your goals or well-being. Identify not only the obvious culprits, like social media or excessive messaging, but also the subtle ones: over-preparation, aimless multitasking, unnecessary meetings, and habitual interruptions that fragment focus. These small drains add up to hours of lost potential each week. Next comes the elimination process. This requires deliberate choices, not vague intentions. Remove, delegate, or restructure any activity that does not align with your priorities. Silence notifications that constantly demand attention. Batch communication rather than responding instantly. Create boundaries around tasks that are draining without being essential. Adjust the environment so that your focus is naturally guided toward what matters. The aim is not to live rigidly, but to prevent trivial distractions from dictating your day. Part of auditing time involves confronting habits that feel normal but subtly undermine efficiency. These habits often operate below conscious awareness. For instance, leaving tasks partially done because they are uncomfortable, checking multiple apps compulsively, or allowing small interruptions to cascade into hours of distraction. Each of these leaks is like a tiny hole in a bucket. Individually, they seem harmless, but together they drain progress. Identify the specific triggers for these behaviors and design responses that prevent automatic engagement. Awareness without intervention leaves the drain open. Time leaks are often emotional as much as practical. People unconsciously seek distraction to avoid discomfort, boredom, or anxiety. Recognizing this connection is crucial. Productivity and focus are not just about efficiency. They are about managing attention and energy. When you notice a silent leak, pause to examine what emotional need it may be serving. Replace the behavior with an alternative that satisfies the need without derailing progress. For example, a 5-minute stretch or a brief reflection can replace mindless scrolling, providing relief while preserving momentum. Prioritization is an essential companion to eliminating time leaks. Not all activities have equal value. Auditing time helps reveal where effort is wasted, but it also clarifies what deserves focus. Identify your highest impact tasks, the actions that produce disproportionate results relative to effort. Allocate the most undistracted, high-energy periods to these tasks. Guard this time as a sacred boundary. The combination of removing leaks and amplifying priority work creates an exponential effect, turning hours into meaningful outcomes. Another tool in auditing is to establish measurable boundaries for recurring activities. Meetings, emails, even routine administrative work can quietly expand unless controlled. Set explicit limits. A maximum of 20 minutes for certain types of calls, specific blocks for email responses, or fixed durations for routine reports. The more clearly defined the boundaries, the less mental energy is wasted negotiating how long each activity will last. Clear temporal limits transform otherwise open-ended obligations into manageable segments. Efficiency alone is not the goal. Presence is equally important. Silent leaks erode not only productivity but also the quality of attention given to each task. Multitasking, constant partial attention, or frequent context switching diminishes effectiveness and creates mental fatigue. Eliminating these subtle distractions allows full engagement with each activity, producing better results in less time. The practice of focused work, combined with awareness of how time is spent, strengthens both performance and mental resilience. Auditing time is a continuous process. Patterns evolve, distractions shift, and priorities change. What was once a silent leak may become manageable, and new leaks will emerge. Schedule regular reviews of how your attention and energy are spent, adjusting boundaries and habits as needed. This iterative approach ensures that control over time is maintained rather than assumed. It transforms time management from a reactive struggle into a proactive design of life. The psychological impact of reclaiming time is profound. People who understand where time goes feel less scattered, less anxious, and more confident in their capacity to act. Decisions are made deliberately, rather than impulsively. Energy is preserved for what truly matters rather than dissipated in constant small demands. Life begins to feel spacious rather than crowded, controlled rather than chaotic. The quiet victories of eliminating silent leaks build momentum for more significant accomplishments. Self-leadership also requires confronting comfort disguised as necessity. Many time leaks persist because people believe they must respond to every request or maintain endless streams of information. The truth is that focus requires selective engagement. Saying no, postponing, or ignoring trivial demands is not selfish. It is an assertion of control over the one resource that cannot be replenished. Every decision to protect time strengthens the authority of self over circumstance. Technology is often the largest source of silent leaks, but it is not inherently harmful. It is neutral. The harm arises from unconscious engagement. Structured use transforms tools into amplifiers rather than drains. For example, using apps to batch tasks, set reminders, or track progress can convert what would otherwise be wasted minutes into productive leverage. Intentionality with technology turns potential distraction into a strategic advantage. Attention to time also changes perception of urgency. Many leaks create artificial pressure. Small, repeated interruptions or low-value activities trick the mind into feeling constantly busy, producing stress and reducing clarity. By auditing and eliminating these leaks, the real priorities emerge, and urgency aligns with significance rather than distraction. This clarity allows decisions to be made calmly and strategically, increasing both effectiveness and satisfaction. Every elimination of a silent leak is an exercise in self-respect. It communicates that your time, effort, and focus have value. Each conscious choice, not to give away moments that cannot be reclaimed, reinforces boundaries and internal authority. This practice strengthens identity, creating someone who acts according to principles rather than impulses, who navigates life deliberately rather than passively. Auditing also encourages reflection on cumulative effect. Small leaks, repeated daily, accumulate into weeks, months, and years. By addressing them, the impact is multiplied over time. The seemingly insignificant act of turning off notifications, consolidating minor tasks, or resisting mindless scrolling grows into hours reclaimed, stress avoided, and progress accelerated. The process emphasizes that mastery over life is built in small, consistent actions, not dramatic gestures. It is important to document findings. A written log of time usage, leaks identified, and corrective actions reinforces accountability. Reviewing this log weekly provides insight into trends, improvements, and areas still vulnerable to erosion. Writing transforms vague awareness into actionable intelligence, giving the mind concrete evidence of both failure and growth. Reclaiming time transforms both productivity and freedom. When silent leaks are eliminated, the day contains space for deliberate action, creativity, learning, and meaningful connection. Life expands in quality even if quantity of tasks remains similar. The shift is internal. Control over attention generates clarity, peace, and momentum. It is the foundation upon which discipline and long-term success are built. The process is not comfortable. Awareness of how much time has been lost often produces unease or guilt. This is not failure, it is evidence of awakening. The discomfort is temporary, but the corrective action is permanent. Once habits are adjusted and leaks sealed, the mind gains confidence in its ability to direct energy effectively. Progress becomes intentional rather than accidental. Silent leaks often hide behind rationalizations. People convince themselves that small distractions are necessary breaks or harmless indulgences. The key is discernment. Each moment should be evaluated against value produced and alignment with purpose. If an activity contributes minimally yet consumes significant attention, it must be modified, postponed, or removed. Continuous vigilance prevents small, habitual compromises from compounding into loss of direction. Ultimately, auditing time and eliminating silent leaks is an act of freedom. It is choosing who you serve, external chaos or internal purpose. Every hour reclaimed is an assertion of authority over life. This discipline grows quietly, compounding with each deliberate action. The process strengthens judgment, resilience, and the capacity to achieve goals without succumbing to distraction. Over time, mastery of attention becomes indistinguishable from mastery of self. It is in these repeated conscious decisions, tracking, analyzing, adjusting, and defending each moment, that a life of discipline, focus, and self-leadership is forged. Time, once a silent thief, becomes an ally, producing space for what is meaningful and cultivating the confidence that life is moving according to intention rather than chance. Number 4. Track habits with visible scorecards. Human beings are wired to notice progress. We feel motivated when we see movement, accomplishment, or measurable improvement. Yet most people live without tangible evidence of their own growth. Days pass in a blur of intentions that remain untracked, promises to oneself that fade into memory, and efforts that vanish without acknowledgement. This is why visible scorecards are transformative. They create clarity, accountability, and motivation in ways that the mind alone cannot sustain. Tracking habits openly turns abstract goals into concrete data, making success and failure undeniable and therefore actionable. A visible scorecard works because it externalizes responsibility. The mind is prone to rationalization. Without objective evidence, it can explain away lapses with excuses, postpone effort, or even convince itself that progress exists when it does not. By recording actions in a scorecard that you can see, you remove ambiguity. Each day's outcome is there in black and white. Success is celebrated, failure is noted, and patterns become evident. The psychological impact is subtle but profound. Behavior becomes harder to ignore, easier to direct, and more consistent over time. To begin, identify the core habits that will shape your life meaningfully. Not every small choice deserves tracking. Focus on habits that have a direct impact on health, growth, productivity, or relationships. Examples include exercise, meditation, reading, skill practice, early rising, or completing high-priority work. Each habit should be clearly defined so that success is measurable. Practice piano is too vague. Practice piano for 30 minutes is measurable and leaves no room for ambiguity. Clarity in definition is essential because what is tracked poorly is improved poorly. The method of tracking must be visible and immediate. A scorecard tucked away in a drawer is less effective because it fails to engage the brain's reward system. A whiteboard, a wall calendar, or a chart next to your workspace allows the brain to process achievement instantly. Each completed habit becomes a visible mark, a check, a filled circle, a colored sticker that provides immediate feedback. The small act of marking a habit reinforces commitment and creates momentum. The visual cue serves as both reminder and reward simultaneously. Consistency is reinforced by the tangible accumulation of marks over time. When you see a chain of completed days, the psychological pull to maintain the streak becomes powerful. Breaking the chain becomes undesirable in a way that verbal promises cannot match. This effect is subtle yet highly motivating because it taps into the human desire for completeness and pattern preservation. A streak is no longer abstract. It is a visible, accumulating representation of discipline. The scorecard is not just for celebrating success. It is also a diagnostic tool. Patterns of neglect appear clearly when tracked daily. If a habit is missed repeatedly on certain days, in certain contexts, or at certain times, the scorecard reveals it. This allows for targeted interventions, rather than vague attempts at improvement. For example, if exercise is consistently skipped on evenings, morning sessions can be trialed, or the environment can be adjusted to remove friction. The data transforms vague intentions into actionable insight. Tracking habits also strengthens the mental connection between action and identity. Each completed habit is evidence of who you are becoming. You do not just say you are disciplined, you see it in the accumulation of marks over time. Identity is reinforced through repeated visible action. When this feedback is public or at least externalized, the effect is magnified because the mind recognizes a record independent of fleeting motivation. Identity and behavior align, creating sustainable momentum. Another aspect of visible scorecards is accountability. Even if only you see it, the act of externalizing progress reduces the opportunity for self-deception. When others are aware of the scorecard, even indirectly, it increases commitment because the social dimension amplifies responsibility. The desire to be consistent, to live up to the record, strengthens self-leadership without reliance on external enforcement. Flexibility is important. A scorecard should not become a source of guilt or shame. Missing a habit is not evidence of failure in character. It is a signal for adjustment. The visual representation allows for reflection. Why was the habit missed? What circumstances contributed? And how can it be avoided next time? Over time, the focus shifts from judgment to learning, turning accountability into insight rather than punishment. The psychological principle behind the scorecard is simple. The human brain responds to patterns. Daily tracking converts abstract goals into repeated, observable actions. Patterns of success and failure are reinforced visually, giving immediate feedback. This accelerates learning, habit formation, and self-mastery. The process teaches the mind to recognize the difference between effort and intention, between action and aspiration, which is critical for long-term growth. Scorecards can also include qualitative elements. While quantitative marks are essential, notes on effort, mood, or obstacles encountered can provide richer data. This contextual information deepens understanding of how habits interact with circumstances and mindset. For example, tracking hours of work alongside notes on distractions, interruptions, or fatigue creates a holistic picture. It is easier to adjust strategies when both performance and context are visible. One of the most powerful aspects of visible scorecards is their ability to build momentum silently. The brain enjoys completion. Each small mark releases a subtle sense of accomplishment, reinforcing the behavior. Over weeks and months, the accumulation creates a visible narrative of progress. This narrative fosters confidence, reduces procrastination, and makes future effort less psychologically taxing. The scorecard becomes a self-propelling system. Action leads to recognition. Recognition leads to reinforcement. Reinforcement leads to repetition. It is important to maintain simplicity. Overly complex tracking systems often collapse because they demand excessive attention. The scorecard should take seconds to update, with clear indicators of success or failure. The simplicity ensures the process itself does not become a source of distraction. The goal is to record reality, not to manage complexity. When simplicity is paired with consistency, the cumulative impact is immense. Scorecards also cultivate self-awareness. By observing patterns visually, the mind begins to anticipate behavior and outcomes. You notice tendencies, strengths, and vulnerabilities. Certain times, conditions, or moods may correlate with lapses or achievements. Awareness of these patterns allows for deliberate intervention before failure occurs. The scorecard becomes a mirror of behavior, showing not only what is done, but what is likely to happen under recurring conditions. Over time, the practice strengthens discipline in ways that abstract commitment cannot. Habits become automatic because the brain associates the visible act of marking with completion, satisfaction, and identity reinforcement. Motivation is no longer the driver. The system itself produces engagement. Even when energy is low, the visual chain nudges action. This is how ordinary people achieve extraordinary consistency, through a simple, visible daily tracking system. Incorporating reflection alongside the scorecard amplifies its impact. Weekly or monthly reviews of the accumulated data allow for recalibration of priorities and strategies. Adjustments are based on evidence rather than emotion or impulse. The process of reflection, guided by visible feedback, converts raw effort into deliberate growth. Each review is an opportunity to refine habits, reinforce successes, and strategically address gaps. A visible scorecard transforms the abstract into the tangible, intention into evidence, and effort into proof. It clarifies where energy is well spent, where improvement is possible, and where priorities must be defended. It does not merely measure behavior, it guides it. It converts passive hope into active accountability, helping the mind see, understand, and adjust in ways that untracked intentions cannot achieve. Ultimately, visible scorecards cultivate mastery over self. They teach consistency, patience, awareness, and intentionality. They provide immediate feedback, build momentum, and reinforce identity. Each mark, each recorded success, quietly accumulates into competence, confidence, and control. The simple act of seeing your habits documented transforms the invisible effort of discipline into something undeniable, compelling, and sustainable. Over time, a life shaped by visible accountability becomes a life guided by deliberate action, where growth is no longer uncertain, and every day contributes clearly to the person you aim to become. Number 5. Practice discomfort through deliberate challenges. Discomfort is the universal signal that growth is occurring. Every meaningful achievement, every skill mastered, every resilient habit formed carries with it the tension of challenge. Life does not reward ease. It rewards effort, applied consistently in the face of resistance. Yet most people instinctively avoid discomfort, interpreting it as danger, failure, or error. This avoidance keeps potential unrealized and talent dormant. True self-leadership requires learning to engage with discomfort deliberately, to see it not as an enemy, but as a guide, a teacher, and an instrument for building strength of character. Deliberate challenges are structured experiences designed to push boundaries without causing harm. They are not reckless tests of endurance or extremes of risk. They are intentional moments where effort exceeds comfort. The purpose is to train the mind and body to tolerate, adapt, and act under stress. By repeatedly confronting discomfort, a person expands the zone of normalcy, reducing fear of difficulty and increasing confidence in the ability to endure. Over time, what once caused hesitation becomes routine, and the individual becomes resilient in both thought and action. The first step is to recognize where discomfort exists naturally. It may be physical, such as holding posture, resisting fatigue, or enduring cold. It may be mental, such as tackling a difficult task, initiating difficult conversations, or facing personal truths. It may be emotional, confronting fear of rejection, uncertainty, or vulnerability. Awareness of discomfort is critical because avoidance often operates subconsciously. By naming the tension, the mind can differentiate between instinctive avoidance and intentional engagement. Deliberate challenges are most effective when approached incrementally. Growth is built gradually, layer by layer. Small, controlled doses of difficulty accumulate into lasting resilience. For instance, deliberately waking earlier than usual, performing a challenging exercise, or engaging in focus study under distractions are manageable discomforts. Each exposure strengthens the capacity to handle larger challenges later. The brain and body adapt to stress through repeated, measured exposure, much like muscles grow stronger through progressive resistance. The principle is consistency over intensity. Engaging with discomfort requires a mindset shift. Discomfort is not punishment but feedback. When tension arises, it signals an opportunity to learn, adapt, and expand capability. The instinct to escape should be noticed but not acted upon reflexively. By practicing deliberate challenges, a person trains the mind to observe sensation, assess reality, and respond with purpose. This transforms fear into information rather than constraint. Each confrontation builds trust in one's own ability to navigate difficulty. A key aspect is deliberate selection of challenges. They should align with personal growth objectives. Random suffering or extreme hardship without purpose produces stress without benefit. For example, choosing to speak publicly despite nervousness strengthens communication, while enduring meaningless physical strain may build toughness but not intelligence or skill. Challenges should be meaningful, measured, and connected to larger life goals. This ensures that effort expended contributes directly to the person one seeks to become. Reflection amplifies the value of each deliberate challenge. After facing discomfort, take a moment to evaluate the experience. What was difficult? How did the body and mind respond? What strategies helped maintain effort despite resistance? Which areas remain vulnerable? Reflection transforms raw experience into insight, allowing each encounter with difficulty to inform the next. Growth becomes intentional rather than accidental, guided by observation and adjustment. Deliberate challenges also cultivate patience. Many discomforts provide delayed rewards. Skill development, endurance, and resilience emerge over time. Immediate results are often absent, yet consistency produces exponential improvement. Practicing discomfort teaches that short-term pain or unease is temporary and subordinate to long-term gain. This understanding reshapes perception, making delayed satisfaction not only acceptable but desirable. The capacity to tolerate the present moment, without relief, fosters deeper perseverance. Exposure to discomfort strengthens decision-making under pressure. When the mind is trained to operate in tension, stress in real-world situations is less paralyzing. A person becomes capable of acting decisively rather than reacting impulsively. Emotional regulation improves because repeated engagement with challenge reduces the brain's reflexive fear response. Rational thought, deliberate planning, and strategic action gain precedence over avoidance or panic. Deliberate challenges, therefore, are not merely exercises in tolerance, but training in judgment and control. Consistency is paramount. Occasional encounters with difficulty provide insight, but limited adaptation. Regular, repeated exposure creates neural and physical patterns that support resilience. The brain and body learn that discomfort is manageable, even predictable. This repetition builds a baseline of strength and confidence that persists even when unexpected challenges arise. Life's inevitable pressures become less intimidating when the foundation of deliberate exposure is established. Deliberate challenges also foster humility. Engaging with tasks beyond current comfort highlights limitations and areas for improvement. Confronting inability without ego collapse teaches acceptance of reality and openness to learning. It reminds the individual that mastery is a process rather than a state. This humility does not weaken confidence, it stabilizes it, grounding effort in awareness rather than fantasy. Strength grows alongside perspective, creating balance between competence and wisdom. Environmental manipulation enhances deliberate challenge. By structuring surroundings to increase friction, the path of least resistance becomes less accessible, encouraging effort. For example, leaving tasks that induce mild discomfort intentionally visible, arranging surroundings to reduce convenience of avoidance, or setting time constraints that press against comfort levels all increase exposure. Small, controlled inconveniences train adaptability and discipline, making ordinary conditions easier to navigate when unpredictability arises. Social dynamics are a natural source of deliberate challenge. Engaging in difficult conversations, asserting boundaries, or offering critique exposes one to tension and potential rejection. These situations provide real-world practice in managing discomfort in ways that build influence, confidence, and emotional intelligence. Avoidance reduces learning opportunities and reinforces fear patterns. By intentionally seeking appropriate interpersonal challenges, self-leadership is exercised beyond private habits into social competence. Tracking challenges reinforces progress. Recording each encounter with discomfort, noting intensity, duration, and personal response, provides both motivation and guidance. Seeing cumulative effort displayed visually confirms growth and maintains accountability. Each challenge becomes part of a larger narrative of self-mastery rather than a singular, isolated trial. Reflection paired with tracking transforms transient experience into measurable development. Deliberate discomfort also expands tolerance for uncertainty. Life rarely follows predictable patterns. By regularly placing oneself in controlled tension, one learns to act without complete certainty, reducing anxiety and indecision. The mind becomes accustomed to navigating ambiguity, making adaptation easier when unexpected challenges arise. Comfort is no longer required for action. Decision-making becomes grounded in principle, analysis, and observation rather than fleeting feeling. The physical body benefits alongside the mind. Controlled discomfort, such as exercise, fasting, or exposure to elements, strengthens endurance, health, and metabolic resilience. Physical adaptation reinforces psychological resilience. The two systems interact symbiotically. Deliberate challenges cultivate self-trust. When discomfort is faced repeatedly and intentionally, confidence in one's ability to endure difficulty solidifies. Fear loses its power when it is confronted with action. Knowing that one can persist even under strain builds internal authority. Decisions, commitments, and leadership of oneself become easier because trust in personal capacity has been verified through repeated experience. Engaging in discomfort also nurtures creativity. The brain thrives on adaptive challenge. By pushing beyond comfort zones, new strategies are discovered, perspective expands, and problem-solving skills sharpen. The mind becomes more flexible, capable of generating solutions under pressure, and less likely to default to familiar but limited patterns. Deliberate discomfort is therefore not only a tool for resilience, but also for innovation and growth in thought. Over time, deliberate challenges rewire perception of effort. Struggle is no longer equated with failure, but understood as a necessary ingredient for growth. Anticipation of difficulty becomes motivating rather than discouraging. The individual begins to seek opportunities for development rather than avoiding them. This proactive approach amplifies competence, confidence, and self-leadership, producing a life where ease is rare and resilience is habitual. Ultimately, the practice of deliberate challenges builds a foundation for all forms of success. Comfort may be alluring, but it is transient and unproductive. Discomfort, faced consistently and intentionally, is reliable, measurable, and transformative. Each engagement strengthens body, mind, and character. Each step beyond the comfort zone increases capacity, capability, and courage. Life is not mastered by avoiding pain, but by welcoming it strategically, harnessing it, and using it to forge a stronger self. Through deliberate challenge, a person learns not only what they can endure, but what they are capable of becoming. Number 6. Pre-commit publicly to stretch goals. Setting ambitious goals is one thing, following through on them consistently is an entirely different challenge. Humans are remarkably skilled at imagining achievement, yet remarkably poor at sustaining the effort needed to reach it. Goals often remain abstract wishes, fading quietly under pressure, distraction, or discomfort. One of the most effective ways to bridge the gap between intention and action is to pre-commit publicly to stretch goals. This act leverages accountability, social pressure, and clarity of purpose to create a structure that dramatically increases the likelihood of follow-through. Pre-commitment transforms ambition from an internal desire into an external responsibility, shaping behavior in profound and lasting ways. Public commitment amplifies motivation by creating external accountability. Humans are social beings, and the opinions, expectations, and observations of others influence behavior more than internal promises alone. When a goal is shared openly, whether with friends, colleagues, mentors, or a wider audience, it introduces social consequences for inaction. The knowledge that someone else is aware of the goal strengthens the resolve to act, even on days when energy is low or resistance is high. The commitment becomes not just personal but relational, increasing the psychological cost of failure, while enhancing the incentive to persevere. Pre-committing publicly also transforms perception of discomfort. Stretch goals inherently demand effort beyond ordinary capacity, and effort is uncomfortable. However, when others are aware of the commitment, The discomfort is reframed as an opportunity to demonstrate integrity and consistency. The mind interprets the challenge not simply as a personal test, but as a situation with social and moral weight. This reframing converts discomfort from a deterrent into a signal that meaningful growth is occurring. It encourages persistence even when motivation fades, because the action now has external relevance in addition to internal importance. Another critical component is specificity in communication. Simply stating, "I want to improve my business skills," is insufficient for accountability. The goal must be articulated clearly and publicly. What action will be taken, by when, and with what measurable outcome. The more precise the declaration, the easier it is to track progress and maintain accountability. This precision also reduces rationalization, because excuses lose credibility when actions are visible and measurable. Public pre-commitment eliminates the vague negotiation of intentions and replaces it with concrete expectation. Timing of commitment is strategic. Pre-commitment is most effective when made before temptation or resistance has fully emerged. Announcing a goal after motivation is high is helpful, but announcing it before the mind naturally resists or procrastinates introduces a protective structure. The brain, when exposed to social accountability in advance, is more likely to follow through automatically. This principle is powerful because it creates an anticipatory form of discipline. Action is initiated before internal excuses have a chance to consolidate. Consistency of updates strengthens the effect of public pre-commitment. Sharing incremental progress creates visibility of effort, not just outcomes. Regular updates to relevant parties reinforce accountability and allow external observation of consistency. This practice also builds momentum psychologically. When progress is documented and observed, it produces subtle reinforcement, energizing continued effort and sustaining engagement with long-term objective. Transparency transforms abstract ambition into a living process rather than an isolated event. Pre-commitment also protects against cognitive laziness. Without a visible obligation, the mind seeks ease, rationalizing delay, lowering standards, or minimizing effort. By broadcasting intention publicly, the individual introduces a counterweight to internal complacency. Social awareness, combined with personal pride, creates friction against procrastination. The cost of ignoring a declared goal, whether embarrassment, disappointment, or perceived unreliability, produces a stronger incentive to act than internal exhortation alone. The psychological impact extends to decision-making. Pre-committing to stretch goals clarifies priorities and directs choices. When daily decisions arise, alignment with the declared objective becomes a guiding principle. Options that conflict with progress become easier to identify and manage. The external commitment functions as a constant reminder of what matters most, filtering out distractions and trivial pursuits. Choices become strategic, and energy is allocated purposefully, increasing both efficiency and effectiveness. Pre-commitment also encourages the cultivation of supportive networks. Sharing goals often invites advice, mentorship, or collaboration from others who are invested in your success. These relationships provide additional resources, feedback, and encouragement, reducing isolation during periods of difficulty. Constructive social interaction enhances persistence and offers perspectives that improve strategy and execution. Accountability, support, and guidance converge to create an environment where stretch goals are not only declared, but actively pursued. Failure within a framework of public pre-commitment has unique value. When a goal is missed, despite effort, the public record provides evidence for analysis rather than self-blame alone. Reflection on missed milestones generates insight about strategy, execution, and personal limitations. Each setback becomes an opportunity to adjust methods, refine effort, and strengthen resolve. The visible nature of commitment converts failure into actionable learning rather than hidden regret, reinforcing growth-oriented behavior over time. Public pre-commitment also strengthens resilience. The act of declaring intention and acting under observation trains emotional stability. Resistance, fatigue, or discouragement is less likely to derail progress when external awareness is present. The social dimension reinforces internal determination, creating a buffer against fleeting emotion. Over time, the individual internalizes the expectation of follow-through, gradually requiring less external reinforcement to sustain effort, demonstrating the compounding effect of repeated public accountability. Stretch goals naturally stretch comfort zones, and pre-commitment magnifies the effect by introducing consequence. This combination produces accelerated growth. The individual is compelled to engage fully, prioritize strategically, and maintain effort consistently. Over time, this disciplined approach rewires behavior, increases competence, and strengthens confidence. The alignment of effort, accountability, and challenge generates momentum that sustains long-term development and habit formation beyond the immediate goal. The clarity, visibility, and social weight introduced by public pre-commitment also reduce cognitive noise, ambiguity about priorities, conflicting desires, or shifting attention drains mental energy. Declaring a goal openly creates structure, reduces uncertainty, and aligns attention with intention. The brain can allocate resources efficiently, focusing on meaningful action rather than internal negotiation. Pre-commitment transforms mental energy from wandering thought into directed, consistent effort. In practice, public pre-commitment can take many forms. Verbal announcements, written declarations, social media posts, or accountability partnerships all serve the function of making intention visible. The medium is less important than the visibility and perceived significance of the commitment. The critical factor is that the declaration carries weight, creating external pressure that reinforces internal determination. The perception of observation motivates action and embeds discipline within social context. Pre-commitment also encourages iterative improvement. By sharing progress and results, feedback becomes available, allowing refinement of approach and strategy. Goals are not static. They evolve in response to challenges, insights, and experience. Public accountability ensures that iteration is purposeful, guided by both internal ambition and external observation. This process cultivates adaptability, learning agility, and persistence, all essential traits for long-term achievement. Ultimately, pre-committing publicly to stretch goals is a strategy for self-mastery. It harnesses social influence, clarity of purpose, and psychological leverage to transform intention into action. It strengthens resilience, cultivates consistency, and accelerates growth by ensuring that discomfort, effort, and focus are directed toward meaningful outcomes. Pre-commitment creates a visible trail of accountability that bridges the gap between who you intend to be and the actions required to become that person. Over time, this practice trains the mind, habits, and character to align with high ambition, producing results that are both measurable and transformative. Number 7. Design environment to reduce friction. Human behavior is heavily shaped by the environments we inhabit, far more than most people realize. Every choice, every action, and even every lapse in discipline is influenced subtly by surroundings. The easiest way to improve consistency, productivity, and self-discipline is not always through sheer willpower, but through designing an environment that reduces friction. When the environment supports desired behavior and removes obstacles, actions that once required enormous effort become almost automatic. Conversely, poorly structured surroundings amplify resistance, increase friction, and make even simple tasks unnecessarily difficult. Understanding this principle transforms the way goals are approached, making discipline easier, more consistent, and more sustainable. Friction exists wherever there is unnecessary resistance between intention and execution. It can be physical, such as having to walk across the house to retrieve equipment, or mental, such as searching through clutter to find necessary documents. Friction also appears socially or digitally, like constant notifications interrupting focus or unorganized systems that require repeated effort to navigate. Each instance of friction, while seemingly minor, accumulates over time, creating a significant barrier between intention and action. Recognizing these hidden obstacles is the first step toward reducing them. Designing an environment to reduce friction begins with observation. For several days, notice every point where effort is slowed, delayed, or complicated. Track recurring interruptions, repeated steps, and areas where attention or energy is wasted. These observations illuminate patterns that often go unnoticed. The smallest adjustments, once applied, produce disproportionate results, because friction compounds silently over hours, days, and weeks. By targeting these inefficiencies, Behavior becomes smoother, faster, and more consistent. Physical space is a primary lever. Clear organization ensures that tools, resources, and materials are immediately accessible. For instance, if exercise is a priority, setting up gear in a visible, ready-to-use location removes the mental and physical hurdles to start. Preparing meals ahead of time, keeping workspaces tidy, or placing important items within easy reach minimizes energy expenditure on trivial actions. The principle is simple. The fewer steps between intention and action, the more likely the action will occur consistently. Digital environments are equally influential. Phones, computers, and apps can either support goals or sabotage them through distraction. Structuring these digital spaces is crucial. Removing non-essential notifications, organizing tools for immediate access, and using technology intentionally prevents attention from scattering. Digital friction is often subtle, appearing as a slight hesitation or repeated distraction, yet it accumulates into hours of lost productivity. Thoughtful design ensures that the digital realm amplifies efficiency rather than undermines focus. Time structuring is a critical aspect of environmental design. Friction can emerge when tasks lack a clear window or sequence. Scheduling tasks deliberately with attention to natural energy peaks removes decision fatigue and hesitation. When the environment provides a preordained path, the need for moment-to-moment deliberation decreases. Decisions are not eliminated entirely but are reduced to necessary, intentional choices rather than constant negotiation with distraction or resistance. Behavioral cues play a pivotal role. Visual reminders, strategically placed prompts, and environmental triggers nudge action without requiring constant internal negotiation. For example, placing a notebook by the bed encourages morning reflection, leaving a water bottle within reach encourages hydration, or arranging a workspace to highlight priority tasks emphasizes focus. These cues transform intention into action by aligning the environment with desired behavior. When done correctly, the environment quietly guides effort in the direction of growth. Eliminating negative friction is equally important. Remove temptations that undermine discipline or delay progress. If unhealthy snacks are a source of mindless indulgence, remove them from easy reach. If distracting websites pull attention away from work, use blockers or rearrange digital access. Friction reduction is both about facilitating positive behavior and preventing negative behavior. By creating a space where ease aligns with virtue and difficulty aligns with distraction, the environment becomes a silent partner in self-leadership. Consistency benefits from habitual environmental reinforcement. When the surroundings naturally cue desired behavior, habits form faster and require less conscious effort. The brain learns to associate specific locations, tools, or setups with particular actions. Over time, discipline becomes less reliant on fluctuating motivation or willpower, and more dependent on the predictability and structure of the environment itself. Habits are not imposed by force, but emerge naturally from the way space and resources are arranged. Environmental design also supports mental clarity. A cluttered or disorganized space is not merely inconvenient. It produces cognitive load. Each visual distraction, unresolved item, or chaotic layout consumes attention that could otherwise be allocated to meaningful work. By creating an environment that is orderly, intuitive, and aligned with priorities, mental energy is preserved for deliberate action. Reducing unnecessary cognitive friction is as important as removing physical obstacles, because attention is a finite resource. Social environments influence friction as well. The people around us shape behavior both directly and indirectly. Supportive individuals, accountability partners, or mentors reduce social friction by providing encouragement, guidance, and reinforcement. Conversely, unsupportive or distracting relationships increase resistance, creating mental and emotional barriers to action. Designing a social environment that aligns with goals is an often overlooked aspect of friction reduction, yet it can determine whether efforts are sustained or undermined. Preparation enhances friction reduction further. Anticipating challenges and structuring the environment to accommodate them prevents delays and excuses. For example, laying out workout clothes the night before, pre-writing notes for a meeting, or preparing materials for a project in advance ensures that energy is focused on execution rather than organization. Each act of preparation removes a small barrier, And cumulatively, these adjustments dramatically increase consistency and efficiency. Environmental design also interacts with emotional regulation. Spaces that are aesthetically calming, orderly, and intentional reduce stress and decision fatigue. Disorganized or chaotic spaces increase cognitive load, triggering emotional strain that can lead to avoidance, procrastination, or impulsive decisions. Thoughtfully crafted surroundings support composure, focus, and resilience, creating conditions where deliberate effort is more likely to occur naturally and without conflict. Feedback loops can be embedded in the environment. Visual indicators of progress, reminders of goals, or easily accessible tools for tracking completion provide immediate reinforcement. Seeing tangible evidence of effort and achievement reinforces behavior and motivates continued action. The environment not only facilitates initial engagement, but also sustains momentum through subtle cues that reward consistency and align attention with priorities. Environmental friction is cumulative. Small inefficiencies in physical layout, digital tools, time management, and social support add up. A minor delay here, a tiny distraction there, and suddenly hours are lost without noticeable effort. Thoughtful environmental design aggregates small improvements into large, consistent gains. Each reduction in friction compounds, creating a system that favors action over hesitation, discipline over avoidance, and progress over drift. Designing for friction reduction requires deliberate experimentation. Test small adjustments, observe their impact, and iterate. The optimal environment is not static. It evolves as needs, goals, and context change. Continuous refinement ensures that the surroundings remain aligned with intentions, reducing resistance, maximizing energy, and sustaining effort. Minor shifts often yield disproportionate returns when consistently applied and observed. Ultimately, reducing friction through environmental design is a cornerstone of self-leadership. Willpower alone is unreliable and finite, but a well-structured environment consistently nudges behavior toward goals. Physical spaces, digital tools, social networks, and time structures all interact to create conditions where discipline flows naturally. The individual is not at the mercy of motivation, distraction, or decision fatigue. The environment supports action, sustains momentum, and protects focus. By engineering surroundings thoughtfully, effort is optimized, progress is amplified, and the foundation for lasting growth is established. The power of a frictionless environment is subtle yet profound. It allows consistent action with reduced mental cost, encourages habit formation, preserves attention for meaningful work, and aligns daily behavior with long-term goals. The environment becomes a partner in self-discipline, silently guiding choices, amplifying effort, and making excellence more achievable. Designing space, tools, and routines to reduce friction is not optional for anyone serious about growth. It is an essential strategy for anyone who seeks to lead themselves first and live intentionally. Number 8. Use consequences to enforce consistency. Consistency is the bridge between intention and achievement. Ideas, goals, and aspirations hold little value without repeated action over time. Yet sustaining consistent behavior is one of the greatest challenges anyone faces. Human nature gravitates toward immediate comfort, instant gratification, and avoidance of discomfort. The mind rationalizes delay, skips effort, and seeks easier paths, often at the cost of long-term success. One of the most effective ways to overcome this natural tendency is to use consequences deliberately. When consequences are clearly tied to behavior, they serve as powerful tools to enforce action, maintain momentum, and transform inconsistency into disciplined practice. Consequences work because they externalize accountability. Human decision-making is heavily influenced by incentives and deterrents. While internal motivation fluctuates, external consequences create predictable frameworks that guide behavior. A consequence does not have to be punitive in a harsh sense. It must be immediate, noticeable, and relevant. The mind reacts more strongly to tangible outcomes than to abstract ideals. When consistency is reinforced through consequences, habits are cemented, priorities are clarified, and the gap between intention and action narrows. The first step in leveraging consequences is clarity. Define the behaviors you wish to enforce consistently. This could be daily study, exercise, focused work, or any other habit that aligns with meaningful goals. The behavior must be specific and measurable. Vagueness allows rationalization. For instance, practice discipline is ineffective. Write 500 words daily or complete a 30-minute workout each morning is measurable and provides a concrete standard against which consequences can be applied. Clear parameters create unambiguous opportunities for reinforcement or correction. Next, design consequences that matter to you personally. The consequence should carry weight and be immediate enough to influence behavior effectively. Delayed consequences often lose impact because the connection between action and result becomes tenuous. Immediate, relevant outcomes ensure that choices are guided by real feedback rather than abstract hope or distant reward. For example, failing to complete a daily task could result in an extra obligation, a financial penalty, or loss of a privilege. The key is alignment. The consequence must feel significant enough to motivate effort without creating undue stress. Self-imposed consequences are a particularly powerful tool for consistency. By creating a system where lapses trigger specific outcomes, a person converts abstract intention into structured accountability. This can include methods such as financial stakes, additional work assignments, or commitments to report results to a peer. When the consequence is anticipated in advance, the mind treats the intended action with greater seriousness. Planning the penalty before lapses occur strengthens commitment and reduces reliance on fluctuating motivation. Consequences are also effective because they introduce immediate feedback into the system. The human brain is more responsive to tangible outcomes than abstract principles. Each consequence serves as a signal behavior has meaning, inaction has cost, and effort produces measurable impact. This feedback loop trains attention, strengthens self-regulation, and reinforces discipline. Over time, the system conditions the mind to act consistently, not from fluctuating emotion, but from a reliable structure of cause and effect. Social consequences amplify consistency further. Accountability to others introduces an additional layer of significance. Sharing commitments with trusted friends, mentors, or colleagues ensures that effort, or lack thereof, is observed. Social visibility creates natural deterrence against lapses. The fear of disappointing others, combined with internal pride, reinforces adherence to routine. Social accountability transforms isolated intentions into collective responsibility, magnifying the psychological power of consequences and enhancing the likelihood of follow-through. Consequences should also be structured to be constructive rather than solely punitive. The goal is not to induce guilt, but to shape behavior. When a lapse occurs, the consequence should provide both deterrence and an opportunity for corrective action. For example, missing a scheduled workout could require doubling the session the following day. This ensures that consequences contribute to improvement rather than merely punishing. Constructive consequences maintain motivation, teach responsibility, and embed growth within discipline. The psychological principle behind consequences lies in the brain's response to reward and punishment. Immediate, tangible outcomes strongly influence behavior because they create clear cause and effect relationships. When consequences are linked directly to specific actions, the brain begins to anticipate results, strengthening decision-making and reducing hesitation. Over time, the repeated association between consistent action and consequence embeds habits at a neurological level, creating automaticity and reducing reliance on fluctuating willpower. Consequences also build resilience. Life is unpredictable, and external pressures often test the ability to maintain focus and discipline. By practicing consistency with self-imposed consequences, the mind becomes accustomed to structured response under pressure. Challenges that would previously provoke avoidance or procrastination are met with a preconditioned response, honed through repeated engagement with stakes. The ability to persist despite discomfort or distractions strengthens confidence and builds a foundation for long-term success. Integration with goal setting enhances the effectiveness of consequences. When consequences are aligned with meaningful objectives, behavior is reinforced in ways that compound over time. Missing a small daily task affects long-term progress, and the consequence ensures attention is maintained. Conversely, achieving tasks without consistent enforcement often leads to sporadic, shallow effort. Strategic alignment ensures that consequences are not arbitrary but serve a broader purpose, connecting daily discipline with long-term achievement. The design of consequences should be scalable and adaptive. Initial behaviors may require stronger incentives or penalties to establish patterns. As consistency becomes habitual, consequences can be adjusted to maintain engagement without creating unnecessary stress. This scaling ensures that the system remains motivating, sustainable, and aligned with ongoing growth, rather than relying on constant escalation or fear. Reflection and analysis enhance the power of consequences. After applying a consequence, consider why the lapse occurred, how it could be prevented in the future, and what modifications to the environment or routine might help. This transforms consequences from mere punishment into learning tools. By analyzing failure systematically, each lapse contributes to improved strategy, insight, and refinement of habits, ensuring that progress continues even in the presence of setbacks. Consequences also interact with identity formation. Consistently responding to structured outcomes reinforces a sense of self as disciplined, responsible, and capable. Each completed task and each enforced consequence strengthens identity alignment with desired traits. This internalization of responsibility ensures that over time, behavior becomes self-reinforcing. Discipline and consistency are no longer imposed externally but emerge naturally from identity and self-concept. The combination of anticipation, immediacy, and significance makes consequences an exceptionally reliable tool. When the mind expects meaningful outcomes tied directly to action or inaction, hesitation diminishes, procrastination decreases, and effort becomes habitual. Even on low motivation days, the mental structure provided by consequences guides behavior. Over time, the system itself reduces reliance on fluctuating emotion, embedding consistency deeply into daily life. Consequences should be monitored for effectiveness. Not all consequences produce the same level of impact. Evaluate which outcomes drive action, which are ignored, and which may create unnecessary stress. Fine-tuning ensures that the system maximizes motivation without undermining confidence or well-being. Thoughtful adaptation transforms a static framework into a dynamic, responsive system that evolves with growth and circumstances. Ultimately, using consequences to enforce consistency is a strategic exercise in self-leadership. It converts abstract ambition into actionable, measurable, and observable behavior. It ensures that effort is sustained even in the absence of motivation, and that lapses produce insight rather than passive regret. By linking actions directly to meaningful outcomes, the mind becomes disciplined, habits become ingrained, and progress becomes inevitable. Consistency is no longer left to chance. It is engineered through thoughtful consequence, creating a foundation for sustained achievement and mastery of self. The deliberate application of consequences bridges the gap between intention and execution. It provides structure, accountability, feedback, and reinforcement. Each consequence is a tool to shape behavior, cultivate resilience, and strengthen identity. Over time, the cumulative effect of consistent enforcement transforms effort into habit, intention into accomplishment, and discipline into a reliable characteristic of character. The mind, body, and environment align to produce sustained action, and consistency becomes not a struggle but a natural extension of deliberate design. Number 9. Review wins nightly, failures objective. Every day presents a series of choices, actions, and moments that either move you closer to your goals or pull you away from them. Often, these moments pass unnoticed, leaving the mind cluttered with vague recollections, half-formed intentions, and unexamined habits. Without reflection, progress becomes accidental, and learning remains incomplete. Reviewing wins nightly and analyzing failures objectively is a practice that transforms the ordinary cycle of day-to-day activity into a deliberate path of growth. This discipline is not about judgment or self-criticism. It is about clarity, learning, and reinforcement. It creates a structure in which accomplishments are celebrated, missteps are understood, and behavior is continuously refined. The first step is to acknowledge achievements consciously. Wins, no matter how small, are signals that the systems, decisions, and habits in place are functioning effectively. Recognizing these moments activates motivation and reinforces the behaviors that led to success. The human brain thrives on positive reinforcement. Daily acknowledgement of effort provides a psychological reward, that strengthens patterns of action. This recognition is more than a fleeting thought. It is a deliberate act of reinforcement that confirms the connection between intention, effort, and outcome. Nightly review begins with a simple act of observation. Take a few minutes at the end of each day to scan the day's activities, noting moments of achievement, progress, or effective execution. Identify what worked well, what was completed efficiently, and where energy was applied successfully. These observations should be tangible and specific, rather than vaguely noting, "I was productive." Highlight that you completed 3 chapters of reading or finished a key client report ahead of schedule. Specificity anchors the mind, providing a clear picture of growth that can be repeated and scaled. Celebrating wins does not require extravagance. It can be as simple as noting the accomplishment in a journal, mentally marking the success, or sharing progress with a trusted accountability partner. The critical element is recognition. When success is visible and recorded, it reinforces identity. You begin to see yourself as someone who achieves, acts, and follows through consistently. This psychological reinforcement strengthens self-belief and increases the likelihood that the behaviors producing success will continue. Objective review of failures is equally essential. Missteps are inevitable, but they are often approached emotionally, with guilt, frustration, or defensiveness clouding understanding. Objective analysis separates the event from personal identity. It asks not, "Why am I bad?" but "What caused this outcome, and how can it be adjusted?" This distinction is fundamental because it transforms failure from a source of shame into a source of information. Each lapse becomes a case study in strategy, execution, or decision-making, providing the insight needed to improve consistently. Begin failure analysis by describing the event clearly and factually. Identify what happened without attaching judgment. Include the context, choices made, and immediate results. Once the situation is defined, explore contributing factors. Was the lapse due to environmental distraction, lack of preparation, insufficient knowledge, or emotional fatigue? Understanding root causes, rather than focusing on superficial symptoms, ensures corrective measures are meaningful and effective. Next, extract lessons from failure. Every unsuccessful attempt contains actionable insight. For example, if a work assignment was delayed, the lesson may involve improved time management, clearer prioritization, or better preparation. If a personal habit was neglected, the takeaway might be adjusting environmental cues, breaking the habit into smaller steps, or implementing immediate feedback. By converting failure into structured learning, each lapse becomes a building block rather than a setback, advancing the trajectory of growth over time. Nightly review fosters awareness of patterns. Over days and weeks, recurring behaviors, strengths, and vulnerabilities become visible. This pattern recognition enables strategic adaptation. Consistency is enhanced when successful routines are reinforced and problematic tendencies are addressed. For example, noticing repeated lapses at specific times can prompt scheduling changes, adjustments to energy allocation, or modifications in environment to reduce friction. The process ensures that growth is informed, deliberate, and cumulative. Emotion regulation is an integral aspect of nightly review. Reflection is most effective when approached with neutrality. Emotional reactions, particularly frustration or disappointment, can distort perception and impair learning. By maintaining calm objectivity, the mind can accurately assess performance and implement meaningful improvements. Emotional clarity ensures that victories are celebrated without arrogance and failures are examined without self-criticism, creating a balanced perspective that supports long-term development. Daily review also encourages accountability. When actions are recorded and analyzed, responsibility is reinforced. The practice becomes a contract with oneself, a consistent mechanism for monitoring behavior. This personal accountability reduces reliance on motivation, which fluctuates unpredictably. Discipline becomes habitual because the daily ritual of review embeds continuous feedback into life's rhythm. Each day ends with both recognition and insight, producing a mindset of continuous refinement. Nightly review has compounding benefits for self-confidence. By regularly observing wins, no matter their size, the mind builds evidence of capability, perseverance, and effectiveness. Confidence is not abstract or assumed, it is based on repeated, verifiable success. Over time, this accumulation of evidence strengthens self-belief, reduces hesitation, and increases resilience. The practice also reframes failure as temporary and actionable, preventing minor setbacks from undermining long-term confidence. The practice encourages mindfulness in daily actions. Knowing that the day will be reviewed creates subtle influence over decisions in the moment. Effort, attention, and intentionality increase because the mind anticipates reflection. Tasks are approached more deliberately, priorities are considered carefully, and choices are made with an awareness of how they will be evaluated later. Nightly review thus shapes behavior proactively rather than reactively, creating a feedback loop where awareness enhances performance in real time. Nightly reflection also reinforces alignment with long-term goals. Daily actions often drift into minor distractions, routine tasks, or reactive behavior. Reviewing wins and failures allows alignment to be checked against higher priorities. Wins confirm that actions support objectives, and failures signal divergence. This daily calibration keeps life focused, ensuring that energy is invested in meaningful progress rather than dissipated on trivial activity. Over time, the cumulative effect produces directionality and clarity in life's pursuit. Journaling is a practical tool for this process. Recording wins and failures creates a tangible history of progress, patterns, and insights. Reviewing past entries reinforces learning, highlights growth, and identifies persistent challenges. The journal becomes both record and mentor, providing evidence of effort, reinforcing identity, and offering actionable intelligence. A written record transforms ephemeral memory into permanent feedback that strengthens decision-making and consistency. Nightly review can be integrated into broader routines to maximize effectiveness, pairing reflection with meditation, gratitude practice, or planning for the following day increases clarity and reinforces intentionality. Wins are acknowledged, failures are assessed, and the next day is prepared with actionable steps. This creates a continuous cycle of learning, improvement, and execution that aligns daily behavior with long-term growth. Ultimately, reviewing wins nightly and failures objectively is a discipline that bridges the gap between effort and improvement. It ensures that accomplishments are recognized and celebrated, lapses are understood and addressed, and patterns of behavior are observed and optimized. The practice strengthens self-awareness, reinforces identity, enhances accountability, and cultivates resilience. Each day becomes a stepping stone, each reflection a guide, and each night a platform for deliberate growth. By making this review a daily ritual, progress is no longer random, insight becomes actionable, and consistency transforms from aspiration into habit. This process trains the mind to perceive effort, success, and failure with clarity and intention. Wins become reinforcement, failures become lessons, and each day contributes meaningfully to the trajectory of personal development. Over time, the accumulation of reflective practice produces a life characterized by deliberate action, continuous learning, and sustained self-mastery. Reviewing each day nightly ensures that growth is constant, disciplined, and directed toward becoming the best version of oneself. Number 10. Iterate goals quarterly with data. Goals are the compass that directs effort, yet setting them once and leaving them untouched is insufficient. Life is dynamic, circumstances change, and priorities evolve. What seemed essential 3 months ago may no longer align with long-term objectives, and what was challenging then may now be insufficient to stimulate growth. To maintain momentum and ensure continued progress, goals must be iterated regularly, using data as the guiding instrument. Quarterly review is an optimal rhythm. It is frequent enough to correct course, yet spaced enough to accumulate meaningful results that inform decision-making. The process transforms static ambition into a living, adaptive strategy for growth. Iteration begins with measurement. Without data, goals remain abstract, and progress is difficult to quantify. Each objective should be accompanied by clear metrics that track performance and completion. These metrics can be quantitative, such as sales numbers, hours studied, distance run, or revenue generated, or qualitative, such as improvements in communication, problem-solving ability, or emotional resilience. Collecting data systematically ensures that evaluation is grounded in reality rather than perception, enabling informed decisions about what is working and what requires adjustment. At the end of each quarter, data should be compiled and analyzed comprehensively. Identify which goals were achieved, which were partially met, and which were neglected. Examine patterns, trends, and anomalies. Did certain goals consistently receive more attention than others? Were there unforeseen obstacles that hindered progress? Did external factors shift priorities or available resources? Analysis provides insight into the efficacy of current strategies and the feasibility of existing targets. It converts accumulated experience into actionable intelligence, allowing decisions to be made based on evidence rather than guesswork or motivation alone. Iteration requires honesty. It is easy to rationalize failure or inflate minor successes, but true growth demands objective assessment. A goal is either progressing, stagnating, or regressing, and clarity on its status is essential for informed decision-making. Objectivity transforms the review from self-deception into a feedback loop that guides refinement. Embracing the truth about results, even when uncomfortable, fosters resilience and equips the mind to respond effectively rather than react emotionally or avoid responsibility. After assessment, goals should be adjusted based on insights from the data. High-performing goals may need to be elevated, made more challenging, extended in scope, or accelerated in timeline to continue stimulating growth. Underperforming goals require investigation. Is the objective unrealistic, the approach flawed, or the external environment unsupportive? Adjustments should be strategic, addressing root causes rather than symptoms, ensuring that iteration produces genuine progress rather than superficial change. This ongoing refinement aligns effort with reality and maximizes the return on time and energy invested. Quarterly iteration also allows for prioritization. Not all goals carry equal weight or urgency, and some may need to be re-ranked in response to shifting circumstances. This process prevents dilution of effort and ensures that focus is maintained on objectives with the highest impact. By continually refining priorities, the mind and resources are directed toward meaningful outcomes, and distractions or low-value tasks are systematically reduced. Iteration thus functions as a filter that channels energy toward what truly matters. Documenting progress and adjustments is essential. Recording results, insights, and changes provides continuity between quarters and serves as a reference for long-term patterns. This historical data helps anticipate challenges, recognize trends, and maintain strategic awareness. Without documentation, each quarterly review would start anew, losing the benefit of cumulative learning. By maintaining a detailed record, decision-making becomes more precise, informed, and strategic, creating a feedback loop that compounds improvement over time. Iteration fosters adaptability. Goals that remain rigid in the face of changing circumstances often become obstacles rather than motivators. Quarterly reviews encourage flexibility without sacrificing focus. Adjustments do not indicate failure. They signify learning and responsiveness. Adaptation ensures that progress continues even when initial plans encounter unforeseen challenges. Maintaining alignment between effort and results. The process converts rigidity into resilience, enabling goals to evolve naturally alongside growth. Data-driven iteration also reinforces accountability. Objective metrics reduce reliance on memory or subjective perception, making performance transparent. Accountability can be internal through self-monitoring and reflection, or external, by sharing progress with mentors, peers, or teams. The combination of clear evidence and visible responsibility strengthens commitment and ensures that actions remain aligned with intention. It transforms ambition into disciplined execution by linking effort directly to measurable outcomes. Iteration enhances motivation by creating visible progress and actionable next steps. Observing data trends highlights areas of improvement and reinforces achievements, fueling momentum. Seeing measurable advancement stimulates the mind to continue investing effort and adjusting strategies. Conversely, stagnation identified through data motivates corrective action rather than passive acceptance. The dual feedback of reward and correction ensures that energy is channeled efficiently, sustaining engagement and determination throughout each quarter. Strategic iteration encourages resource optimization. By analyzing which goals yielded the most significant impact, time, energy, and attention can be redistributed to maximize return. Less productive efforts are either refined, delegated, or eliminated, while high-value objectives receive increased focus. This process reduces waste, clarifies priorities, and ensures that every action contributes meaningfully to growth. Data provides the insight necessary to align resources with ambition, creating a more efficient and effective pursuit of objectives. Iteration also reinforces learning and skill development. Each quarter produces a cycle of experimentation, strategies are tested, results are observed, and adjustments are made. Successes validate approaches, while shortcomings highlight areas requiring new skills, methods, or habits. Over time, this iterative process cultivates not only the achievement of goals, but also the continuous refinement of capability. The individual grows in competence, judgment, and strategic awareness alongside tangible accomplishment. Quarterly goal iteration naturally integrates reflection and planning. Analysis of past results informs the creation of new goals, ensuring continuity and progressive challenge. Lessons learned from one period influence strategies for the next, creating a chain of cumulative improvement. This continuous loop aligns ambition, effort, and learning, producing exponential growth rather than linear progress. Each quarter becomes both an endpoint and a launching pad for the next stage of development. Iteration grounded in data builds confidence and self-trust. By consistently evaluating evidence, adjusting plans, and observing improvement, the mind develops a reliable sense of competence. Confidence is not based on perception or luck, but on verified performance. The individual learns to trust their ability to plan, act, and adjust effectively, reinforcing both discipline and resilience. Over time, this trust transforms uncertainty into controlled experimentation, fostering a proactive mindset toward challenge and opportunity. The discipline of quarterly iteration cultivates foresight. By observing trends and patterns over multiple periods, the individual begins to anticipate challenges, identify opportunities, and plan strategically. Decisions become more informed and proactive rather than reactive. Data-driven iteration teaches not only adaptation but also anticipation, giving the mind the ability to navigate complexity and change with skill and composure. Ultimately, iterating goals quarterly with data transforms ambition into an evolving system of deliberate progress. It converts abstract aspirations into measurable outcomes, aligns effort with reality, and fosters continuous learning. Each cycle of review, adjustment, and implementation builds competence, clarity, and resilience. By integrating measurement, reflection, and iteration, long-term goals remain relevant, achievable, and aligned with the evolving trajectory of growth. Progress becomes deliberate, consistent, and adaptive, creating a life directed by insight, discipline, and purpose rather than chance or transient motivation. This practice ensures that effort remains aligned with outcomes, strategies remain effective, and growth is sustained over time. It transforms goal setting from a static plan into a dynamic process that compounds success. The cumulative effect of quarterly, data-driven iteration is mastery over action, clarity of direction, and continuous refinement of both skill and character, producing a life in which deliberate progress is both inevitable and measurable.